Yes, 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 yes. We are live at ISO Radio Stack Market. That was a crazy set from Rare Form. Mad. So blessed to hear that. And we are in the studio in conversation. Marcus Graham, introduce yourself.
Yo, yo, Marcus, Lost Paradise. It's an honor to be here with my brother Kazeem.
Jeez.
We have some amazing, beautiful conversations. So I'm just happy to be here to have those convos.
Yes, thank you so much. I mean, early people who know about new currency will know that we've had a conversation before in the past. If you find you can, it's somewhere on the internet.
Somewhere in the archives.
Somewhere in the archive. But yeah, thank you so much for pulling up to the studio, man. I think like we have like a lot of like conversations in person about culture and like, just creativity. And I think like you're so important that people don't know like things that you do. Like you're really, really behind the scenes. So, and just so you know, like this guy, like he's like early days, you were like putting on for the city in very like interesting ways by like putting on your own shows. Utopia was an amazing platform that you created. The festival, Lost Paradise, and then you got to working with Manifesto, really, you know, bringing like really interesting artists together, creating these amazing moments, and you're the person who's sort of like placemaking, architecting these realities. So I guess like before we even get into that and just talking about culture in general and kind of like where are we now when it comes to all this shit is what's your entry point into like all of this that you do?
Wow. I think my entry point is just someone that was always like intrigued with like the Toronto like music scene, the Toronto like culture scene. So like probably around like 2014 and stuff like that. That's where I kind of like started like really like you know diving in. So like especially coming from like our side of things, where like specifically like Miss Art and stuff like that, and just being intrigued with like all the artists and creators like coming into the space. So I just wanted to kind of be a part of it and contribute it in a very like unique way. So like even like the early days for like Utopia, that was created like from a space of like need, essentially. It's like, yo, we have all this beautiful, amazing talent. How can we create like a very like unique platform that can like resonate with everyone and try to find a way that will kind of like appeal to like the masses. So like my entry point is just kind of being like a student of the game, volunteering with any opportunities that came our way, but also due to like whether it might be the lack of resources, spaces, like finding ways to kind of like do it ourselves. Like Utopia was birthed from like me and my friends.
Yeah.
Inspired going to the shows, inspired having these conversations with like all these talents. Like, okay, we need to find a way to kind of like help create momentum and add to like the contribution and kind of create like spaces and platforms that can like elevate. So yeah, that's my entry. Just like producing shows,
Yeah.
volunteering, just finding ways to like plug myself in, and then trying to find ways to plug in like other folks.
Right. Before, actually, let's talk about your friends for a second, because I know Gio and Joseph, right?
Yeah.
You used to do parties with them, no?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
before,
Scenes.
scenes. Yes, yes, yes.
The
I remember
infamous.
scenes. Yeah, 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 yeah. Those parties were hard.
Nah, that was a moment because a lot of people don't know. Like when we're in uni, we all went to UTM, so that's U of T at Mississauga campus. And on low key, I think a lot of like great talents came out of the space from that particular institution. So we were actually throwing parties on campus. We're all part of like student clubs. That's how we kind of really got involved when it comes to like producing events, shows, concerts, and parties. It kind of really started just being part of like student clubs at the university. So we were throwing these parties called Cold Sweat, Heat Wave, and it got to a point it became like as big as we could ever imagine. Like we're being out like the school parties,
Right.
like, like we're like getting somewhere the ballpark like 600 people with ease.
Crazy.
Like all these like other students from like other schools just like driving all the way to Saga, like to come and experience like these parties we're throwing. And then because of the success with that, we're able to leverage a deal with a venue in Mississauga called Anco. And the funny thing
I
about that,
remember
yeah,
that. You used to go to that.
yeah,
Holy
and the
shit.
funny thing about like Anco, a lot of people remember it was like a club solely for like Latin parties. Like that was their main thing. They weren't like really throwing like parties, geared to like demo and stuff like that. So we went to them like, yo, we've been doing parties on campus. We average around 500-600 people, and like there's not really like a dedicated space like in Mississauga to kind of throw these parties. So let's kind of like figure out and come together to create something special. And then we launched scenes, and from the first party it was a go. Like every time we threw it was like mayhem. So like yeah, that was a moment that we're able to like bring to life. And as I said, it came out of a space where like a necessity. They weren't like we weren't seeing like a lot of like curated parties the way we wanted to see, because that's where we were introducing new music. Like,
Right.
we're a huge fan at the time, was like early on like UK music. So like
Yes.
if you came to like a scenes party within like the first hour, we dedicated to like playing either like UK music or songs we found on like SoundCloud. So people coming in hearing like Hardy Capio, early Huss records, like all these talents, like early Lancey Foe from SoundCloud days,
Yeah.
like and then people are like, yo, like what is that?
What is
Like,
this?
whoa,
Yeah.
this is before Shazam, so like people are like trying to write it down in their in their phone and stuff like that. So yeah, so that was a moment when it comes to scenes.
Yeah, I remember those days. I didn't even think I knew you.
Nah,
But I used to go to those parties.
yeah,
Yeah, my friend, boy, like was like, "Yo, we're going to Anko tonight." I was like, "Bet."
men's taking long drives.
Yeah, all the way from like Vaughn.
Wow. Nah, it was
Yeah,
crazy. It got crazy. We're like a lot of people tell us like, yeah, they were traveling from like DT, East End,
Yeah,
folks from like Hamilton area were driving down. So it was definitely a beautiful moment.
yeah, that's amazing. Um, do you are these things still happening? Like, is there a new wave of kids that are doing this in Mississauga?
Fortunately, not. At least to my knowledge, is a whole different era. We haven't really seen like, of course, there's probably like parties here and there, but not the way like this is like around like 2016, 2017, like the way we're kind of like attacking it. Like like there's no like dedicated spaces in Mississauga, especially like when it comes to like club venues. It's like
Yeah,
little to none. Like Anco's not Anco no more. It's been renamed to something else
yeah,
owned by someone. And then I think there might be like two other maximum like other spaces, but in regards to like the party scene in Mississauga, nah.
yeah. I feel like there's a little bit of, or actually more. Like, there's not necessarily anything that's going on in like I'm not hearing anything that's going on in Scarborough or Mississauga or Brampton that's very like intentional
Yeah.
that way. Like
It's kind of crazy because it's like outside of that, we come from, especially like if you're like born and raised or you spend a good amount of time in like, Saga, Scarborough, like any of like the East or West End, outside of venues, like we're known for like the bashment jams.
yeah,
Like even that, I don't even hear about like with like my younger brother or like, my nephews or just like, um, young folks like that we run into, like they don't have the same experience,
yeah,
and it's sometimes kind of like sad to see because like that's pretty much like culture, like those experience got us to like us being able to like throw our own parties because we can identify with like certain things. Like people don't know, like if you're going to a house party, sometimes you gotta wait outside for like 30 minutes because you're trying to get in and all these things and stuff like that, or like even like banquet type parties where
yeah,
you used to go
yeah.
to like
The
the
hall
random, yeah,
parties.
the random hall banquet parties. So like a lot of people don't know, like even back in the day, like early like Alpha B artists will come in, like those shows were at like banquet halls. Like the
Yeah.
first time Wizkid and those guys came, they were performing at banquet
That
halls.
yeah, I remember that. I remember I was trying to go to a Wizkid show. It was like at a banquet hall. I couldn't. It was just like overran
Yeah,
and packed. Yeah.
it's different times. So it's interesting to kind of see like when it comes to like the party scene, especially in like Saga, Scarborough, not being as the same, because you would think with like all the groundwork kind of like laid down, it would be like bigger,
Yeah.
in terms of like providing space. But it also goes down to like the institutions too. Like like I think that's a battle within itself, and that's something you hear like consistently, especially when you have like curators, promoters, DJs, trying to throw events, especially when it's dedicated for like people for us, and there's always like that pushback, especially when you're trying to get like situations to be very reasonable, like
Yeah.
because you also don't want to be in a situation where you're kind of getting jerked. Like, yo, if I'm bringing this community of people, I want to create first of all like a very safe environment for everyone to enjoy themselves. But on top of that, the business needs to make sense,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of people are now starting to where like their value when it comes to like throwing these events, and that's something we learned early on. Like even with like scenes, we had to like renegotiate with Anko. Like I think after the third party, after Halloween, because once we found out how much they made, we were like, nah, 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 nah. We need to go back to the table and figure some numbers
Yeah.
out. So yeah,
It's interesting because I even want to like because I think like before we even started this conversation, before we started recording this or like I think we're talking about the craft that goes into like creating a party or club culture, and it's interesting how you said like at the beginning of scenes you the first hour it's all about discovery,
yeah,
playing these records that you find on SoundCloud and like UK blah blah blah, like I feel like oh god,
yo, we're here. Let's
yeah,
talk.
there's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack because I feel like right now, like at least like from me, what I'm looking in the landscape in Toronto, it feels like there's too many parties
Yeah.
that are going on that like I feel like there's sort of like a lack in the craft of the presentation of these things. Like I feel like people see like a certain party or club night do really well, you know what I'm saying? And then they're like, oh, like, this person is probably raking in X amount of dollars. Let me create my own thing. And obviously, I don't think the city's infrastructure is, or even the population is sort of strong enough for us to sustain so many things at the same time in one night, as opposed to all of us actually just supporting one like really good night. So I just want us to like just even just like unpack that a little bit in terms of like just the craft of like club culture and this idea of like like my friend Miles released this T-shirt, "No More DJs."
That's fire.
You know what I'm saying? And it's really interesting. It feels like a really like dope meme, but when you really unpack it, it's just like yeah, maybe there's too many DJs. You
Yeah,
know?
I think it kind of comes down, and there's like pros and cons when it comes to things like this. Like when a party or collective creates something beautiful, the beauty of it is being able to create something that everyone could, enjoy themselves and have fun.
Yeah.
And then the other side of it is like duplication, because like especially in the era we live in, like the DJs kind of became like the new celebrities, and people think it just is easy to DJ. A lot of people don't know like it took like a lot of people like years to kind of like perfect their craft before you seen them.
Yeah.
Like like a lot of like these DJs are like popping up. Like we both seen them at like early starts trying to like work out the kinks and stuff like that, and it's beautiful to see them where they're at. But when you create something so big, everybody wants a piece of that. Like I'll even use my own like personal experience. So like going back to like Utopia, I remember this is 2016, so this is after the second Utopia, and that was the one that we got like a lot of like positive feedback, attention. Like it was just kind of like I guess the talk of the town. I think it was like 2 3 months later, there was like a collective, and they're throwing like their own like show concert, and they called it Dystopia. And like 50% of the artists in the lineup were on Utopia.
That's
I
actually
was like,
wild.
what? Like, I'm living in the Matrix right now. Like, what's going on? Like, I can see this.
Right.
Like, and it's gonna get back to me. But then at the same time, I kind of look at it as like because of the success of how we curated Utopia, it kind of inspired other individuals to kind of create something similar. But at the same time, it kind of creates like a bad impact on like the culture and the scene because
Right.
you're not bringing something new or you're not bringing something to like elevate it. Because now it's like, as you said, like there's too many parties, events, functions that's very similar. Like to the point I can't tell which is which.
Which is which,
Because
exactly. Yeah.
if I go to this party and or I miss it, whatever, and I go to the next one, to me it's kind of like the same thing. Like
Yeah.
and I think that's what's kind of missing from like the Toronto club culture is like being authentic to like what you're trying to create. Because a lot of like the parties or events that end up becoming popular, they created from a special space, a special
Yeah.
place,
Yeah.
to the
Yeah.
point that monetary was kind of like second to them.
Yeah.
Like all that came afterwards, right? But now you start seeing people like starting to DJ. DJ is like the new influencer now.
Yeah.
Like I'm just gonna DJ because outside the money it makes me look good, get a lot of followers, get a lot of buzz. Like especially you already have a following on like social media and you decide to pick up DJing like right after. You can get a couple of gigs if you know a couple of people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you're kind of like having this impact where it kind of hinders like the ecosystem of like the whole like culture and the whole scene. So it's like unless you truly love like that community and that culture and you're trying to create something special that's going to continue to like push that culture forward, you kind of doing a disservice.
Yeah.
And yeah, it got to a point like almost every single DJ has a collective.
Yeah. Yeah.
Literally,
Yeah.
like, and then
Yeah.
every collective has their own like events. And now like
Yeah.
one night is easily 10 events, like.
100%. And
And-
it's like, respectfully, like, I think, like, I don't want to see any more I'm a piano parties. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's like, is anybody gonna like get up and start a tech house party, or like,
Yeah.
like a like uh like Chicago house,
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
something like that's different. I think, like, you go to like the 3 or 4 I'm a piano parties that are happening, and it's like the same set.
Yep. Yep.
It's different if you're just like, yeah, and that's the thing. I think, like, I personally care too so much about
Hmm.
like music and how it's disseminated, that I think I want to critique it, because I
Yeah.
want to see it be better,
Hmm.
or see
Hmm.
people do better.
Yeah.
You know. But yeah, that's just like my little take on it. But
Nah, I'm with you. That's the thing.
yeah,
Like, we truly care about this.
yeah,
Like, I like, even anything I do. Like, I try to tell people, like, a lot of, like, outside of like music, like the projects like I work on, I know the projects you work on.
yeah,
It's like we get to a space like we'll even like turn down money if it doesn't make sense to us, because we're not just doing it just to do it. Like, we
yeah.
had conversations where like I remember you told me, I'm not gonna put the name brand whatever, blast and stuff like that, but you told me you had a crazy opportunity, which would have been a crazy look for like new currency stuff like that, but because they weren't gonna give you like a certain space where you could get enough
Yeah,
exposure, you're like,
yeah,
you know what, I'm
yeah,
off it.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
A lot of
yeah,
people wouldn't do that.
yeah.
Like,
It didn't make, yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah,
we care so much about like what we're putting out there. Like, even the stuff I work on, like the things you see me put out, like I'm probably sitting on it for like 6 to 8 months, just working away on it to make sure like it's perfect. And for the most part, not everything will be perfect, but to the point that I feel comfortable like with sharing that with the world, and then how the world receives it is how the world like receives it and stuff like that. So my thing is like I just want to see people stay authentic to the true stuff. Like, don't look at it as as a way to kind of like get money like real quick, but that's the space we kind of live in. Like, once people see certain things successful, they don't care about like contributing to it. They just care like, yo, let me just get my bread up.
yeah. And an example I'll even bring up before I even switch the conversation is
Hmm.
like Slow Jams with A in London.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like, AAA loves R&B.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Throughout the whole pandemic, he had this radio show, Slow Jams with A, that like I would tune in, and he's like, it was interesting because, like, Slow Jams with A is very specific, because it's like he's not playing like 90s R&B. It's like contemporary R&B from the now. Right? So it's
Yeah.
like the SZAs, the Summer Walkers, the Brent Fayez, all that stuff, right? Where people are like coming to these parties like, oh shit, this is a space for us to listen to like all this shit that is actually new. It's like when anybody wants to do an R&B party, they're playing Aaliyah,
Yeah.
Monica, like all,
Like all the 90s,
all the
80s, early
90s stuff. But this
2000
was actually a fresh take on like playing slow
in
jams
real time.
in real time, and then also like adding like slow wine and all that stuff, that to see it grow from a radio show to kind of like this very
In person.
in-person phenomenon in the UK, and to it now is growing to be a global thing, because they're doing things in Australia
Yeah.
and
They're touring with it.
Toronto. They're touring
Yeah.
with it. It's beautiful to see, and also because I think for me, I'm very privileged to be privy to sort of the behind the scenes of Soul Jams
Yep.
with A, just to even see the craft in like how is the party being documented, like through photography, through video, the lighting, everything is very like all the lighting when all the parties he does at Outernet and stuff, like there's a lot of his lights that are there that's his, that he's bought. That's a very specific
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
way. The fact that like you're buying your own lights for your party,
That's
you know what I'm saying? That's
yeah.
a level of
Care,
care
yep.
that goes to how you want people to experience this thing. You know what I'm saying? So I think like and like for 1 year straight he's doing the parties for free.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
Oh,
just to
shit.
even build, just to even like, because he's like, because I think it's a thing where it's just like, let's build this thing, let's have people trust, let's like, just come, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Then
yeah.
you can, and so it's really beautiful to see. But yeah, I just wanted to put that out there because I think like anybody who's trying to like start a night or start something, there's a level of like study and research and craft that goes into it.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, you nailed it on the head. Like, going back to my side, even early days before we switch over to like Utopia, that came out of space where like at
Yeah.
that time we're like, yo, the reason why I kind of, it was two things. I remember, wasn't it? Shout out to Shereen Taylor. She had tweeted about at that time they weren't opening up spaces like hip hop and R&B artists to do live shows. And then second, a lot of like Canadian radio platforms, they weren't like playing their music.
Yeah.
Like I remember at one point you had artists like Daniel Caesar Get You. It wasn't getting played on radio. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is like the biggest thing. Or you go to like certain like functions and you're hearing like certain like records from like Toronto artists that was kind of making waves around that time. So I'm like, well, if y'all not gonna create space and amplify their voices,
Yeah.
me and my friends are gonna find a way to do it. You know, because we need to create an ecosystem that's gonna like amplify like all these various artists and creatives, you know, whether it's from a face foreign, from a like talent perspective, or
Yeah.
behind the scenes from a creative standpoint.
Yeah, I want to talk about before I talk about this other thing before I forget. I want to talk about like what you did in the summer with Uncle Waffles. Can you talk about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, just because it was interesting, and also you've been really doing like stage design. Yeah, and obviously it's interesting, like going from Utopia to now actually
Yeah.
trying to build environments. You did stage design for Ashake, and then Uncle Waffles. Like, explain that process and the point of entry into that, and how do you sort of, because I was seeing that and I was like, wait, what is Marcus up to?
Yeah. It's funny how like things work. So that entry point kind of really stems from our time at Manifesto. We're able to establish, great relationships, and this is where I also had to give kudos to Tanisha Richards. She was the ED at Manifesto at the time, and then she's gone on to create her own agency called 925. So a lot of people don't know the backstory. So when we were at Manifesto in my second year, we were trying to get a Ashake to headline the festival, but it was a bidding war and all these things, so we weren't able to get it done. So fast forward, their team reached out to Tanisha about the show, and then also like producing it. And then Tanisha had reached out to me alongside Ronnie to kind of like help like put it together. So it's kind of funny. That was like our first time being able to like design a stage for like an artist of like that magnitude. So like of course it came with like like are we built for something like this? But at the same time, that was something that was like intriguing to us because now it's like we can flex like different creative muscles like within us and able to like do something like that. So once we got the call, we created like I think 4 or 5 variations of the deck, and like throughout that whole process, like even myself, we were learning like a lot of things. So it's not just simple as just like drawing a couple of dimensions and piecing it together. Like a lot of things come into play, and then we sent them a couple of ideas. They went with one they truly appreciated. They took a couple of things on their end, and then we're able to like piece it together. That's where we're able to like design the stage for Shake during the Canadian tour, and then because of the success and positive feedback from us collectively designing that stage, that's where the Uncle Waffles opportunity comes. We also have like a great relationship with like the booking agency. So like the booking manager for Uncle Waffles is also the booking manager for Shake.
Wild.
So we're like the booking agent go to at this point. But yeah, they reached out. They're like, Uncle Waffles is going on a Canadian tour, and specifically for her festival stops, she's trying to like brand herself. She's trying to like take tap into this new space or reach this new level like within the career, and like she's very big on like how she brand herself, and she just wants to like take it to the next level. So when that call came in, we started like sketching ideas, and then pretty much they wanted to kind of us like redesign what she was kind of doing already like at the Europe shows and stuff like that. So we just kind of like found ways to like elevate it and stuff, and then we're able to do the stage design for like our festival stops. So
Yeah.
it's funny how things work, because if you told me like going into like 2024 like yo, me and Ronnie
Yeah.
are going to do some stage designs for like artists we really like mess with,
Yeah.
like that's nuts. And everyone knows Ashaki is like one of my favorite artists, so the opportunity to like work with him and his team, and then also to work with like Uncle Waffles and be able to create something special with them is a blessing. So yeah, that's how those opportunities come, and we're very grateful to
Yeah.
play a small role in that.
Yeah, and then with Manifesto, so anybody who like explain what Manifesto is for anybody who doesn't know.
Yeah, so
to
Manifesto is a
contextualize.
Manifesto is a nonprofit organization that's focused or is like an incubator for like, music and arts. So historically, they're known for doing these like annual shows or festivals within Toronto, which has been great. They've been running for like 16, like, 17 years. Like, I grew up like, especially when I was in like high school, like early uni, like, taking the subway, going to like Dundas Square when they used to be free, just to catch like the artists. Like one year I went to go catch like Janae Aiko, you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
And then, yeah, so it's pretty much a non-for-profit organization that focus on the music space and arts, and then also like dabbles into like also like a educational incubator into like, providing resource and platforms for like emerging talent.
Yeah, and what was your role there?
I was director of programming,
Okay.
so like my role was one helping like coordinate and oversee like the festival, and then like overseeing like other portfolios. But the funny thing is like when I was there, like outside of maybe like the festival and the educational bit, a lot of things we were doing with Manifesto had nothing to do with my role.
Right.
It's one of those things where like any opportunity that comes your way, you try to make the most of it. So like I try to tell everyone, like even though my role on paper was like director of programming, I treat it the same way as like a designer would treat like you just got appointed to a fashion house. It's like how can I do the most with this? So like even like the first thing I did when I get there was the My Manifesto campaign, because I just felt at the time I felt like the audience has grown up for like Manifesto, and we had to like repurpose our attention, our focus to like the youth culture and the young adults. And the only way we can do that is being able to create a campaign and bringing in folks that I feel like is the new generation of Toronto. And then after
Yeah.
that video, that's where you start to see a lot more things coming out of Manifesto. Like first I didn't understand it, but once you seen
Yeah.
the video and you seen the
Yeah.
reaction of it, like all right, this makes
Yeah,
sense.
that was an amazing campaign. Like you're like full creative director vibe on that. Like
Thank
it
you.
was dope. But I think what's interesting in your story is the fact that like you start doing these parties, and then it goes into you doing these festival, the Utopia Festival, then you go into this bigger role at Manifesto where you're in charge of like, bringing all these artists, creating these relationships, and then you're doing stage design, and it's just interesting to just see the trajectory and this through line sort of narrative of just your relationship with music and how it can sort of manifest in multiple mediums. But yeah, I think the reason why I highlight that is that because I think like, someone can enter, someone can their entry point into music could just be a DJ, but then you can just
Yep.
end up on the other side,
Yep.
Yeah. But what's exciting you these days about Toronto specifically, like in terms of like, culture, music? Is there anything that's exciting you or anything that you want also kind of just not happening anymore in the city?
I'll answer the first part. No, there's a lot of things that's inspired me. Like, I think like the new wave of creatives are exciting me like the most, and seeing like what they're doing. Like I always try to tell people like it's always like either like my friend circle or people that I see whether it's through like social media or end up stumbling going to the event and seeing like all the things they do. Those are the ones that are kind of like inspiring me. So like when it comes to like creatives, like for example, Dom. I just love everything she's doing with like her series.
Yeah, Dominic
Yeah,
Burnside. Yeah, Bun
yeah,
sized
Bun Size. Yeah,
on
shout out.
Instagram. Yes.
Yeah, I think her series. I think it's called. I think too much, or sometimes I think too much.
Yes.
And I went to the first one last year. I was supposed to go to one a couple of days ago, and I was just like I was sick, so I wasn't able to go. But I just love how she's creating space and community, and it's different. It's
Yeah.
like because I didn't know what to expect when I first went. It's like
Yeah.
I'll just go because like she's like one of the homies and we have a cool rapport. So I'm like, I'm just gonna go and support. But I didn't know like what I was walking into. So seeing her able to create a space where you can hear like spoken word, performance, have conversations, but more importantly, a space where like folks that don't know each other could also be vulnerable. I think that's something that really like, you know, I'll just like wow, like, that's amazing. But, a lot of creators like shout out to like, Isabel, Sam, Abdu,
Dion. Yeah.
Dion, like,
Yeah.
everyone's doing amazing. My biggest thing is like the work we do. And I was having this conversation with my friends a couple of days ago. Is like the work we do whatever our end result is, we might not be able to see like in our lifetime. But at the same time, we just hope that we're able to create spaces where the next generation that's coming after us have bigger opportunities. We've
Yeah.
been able to you've been able to do a lot of amazing things with a lack of resources, especially like in Toronto, and that feels like a day-to-day conversation at this point. Like every like person creator I've seen is like, yeah, I want to do more, but like the funds ain't there, the resource
Yeah.
ain't there.
Yeah.
I'm about to like move, and that's sad. We're losing a lot of talent just because things ain't panning out. But yeah, I think the new creators like is always inspiring me. I think if you look on a bigger scale when it comes to like brands and corps, I think just people in those spaces are starting to like understand like what we do and what we can add to it and how we can like work with each other. And then to answer your other question, I just want people to stay authentic. Don't feel the need like because you see something successful, unless you're gonna contribute and elevate it in a certain way. Just stay true to yourself, stay authentic in the process, because we can see that, like
Yeah, facts.
like the other
Yeah.
thing, like it's not hard to tell, like as soon as I see like a certain post or image and stuff like that, and I'm not trying to be like a hater and stuff like that. I'm just trying to be like as honest and transparent as possible. Like what draws like until like what really gets to me is like people are really authentic with the story, like they're doing something that I haven't seen, and they're doing something to kind of like push the taste level in this city. But yeah,
Yeah. Man, thank you so much, man.
my
Yeah,
guy.
for pulling up. Yeah, this is New Currency Radio, ISO live from Stacked with Marcus Graham. Thank you so much.